Why do feminists know so little about feminism? Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and by now this has come up a lot in my videos and I need to elaborate on the phenomenon a bit. You see, if anybody is familiar enough with feminism to critique feminism in depth, they have undoubtedly learned by now that the vast majority of feminists know almost nothing about feminist history, theories, or contemporary feminist organizations, politicians, and media figures. I like to say that it seems like only about 5% of self-identified feminists actually know anything about feminism, and the other ones have an understanding of feminism that basically boils down to thinking that women have it worse than men in society, and feminism is the way to solve that problem. They have the usual checklist of reasons why regarding the debunked wage gap statistic, the debunked college rape statistics, problems with birth control access in vastly exaggerated amounts of places, street harassment, domestic violence, mansplaining, manspreading, basically everything they can bring up to back up the notion that women have it worse, and it's because society is messed up because patriarchy, so be a feminist, problem solved, basically. From my observation, that's seriously the gist of everything 95% of self-identified feminists actually know about feminism, and I have come to the conclusion that there's very specific reasons for that. It's rather similar to people like evangelical Christians, really. The vast majority of evangelical Christians could rattle off a select few Bible verses that have been ingrained into their heads over and over by their preachers, but they'd never be able to tell you about the parts of the Bible where Jesus pretty clearly tells people not to behave in the shitty ways that the religious right actually behaves in. No. All the average evangelical knows is that all people are born sinners. Going to church will get you into heaven. You better donate to the church as much as possible, and you better vote for politicians who are open about being Christian. It's not much different than the way feminism operates today. You see, the masses of any ideology or religion are more useful as loyal, obedient, yet uninformed as possible than they would be if they actually understood what was going on inside the control room. The second followers of an ideology know that the men or women with influence are just people like anybody else, people who might make mistakes and actually might even do some drastically immoral things on occasion, the followers are a lot more likely to withdraw support to the greater organization. As somebody who advocates for the gender-specific issues of men and boys that has a long history of interacting with both the uninformed feminist masses, as well as being very familiar with the behavior of professional feminists, I have noticed the same thing happening when I try to inform the uninformed feminist masses about the kinds of things professional feminists actually do with their time, as individuals notice when they try to debate the intricacies of religion and the hypocritical actions of religious politicians to the average religious person. The mistake I made, that I'm sure many people have made when they approached these types of conversations, is that we gave the ideologically driven person the benefit of the doubt in terms of assuming that they would be interested in learning about the shortcomings and potential destruction coming from their ideology. Once you try to tell a hardcore evangelical Christian about the messed up stuff George W. Bush did that Jesus Christ almost definitely wouldn't have approved of, you undoubtedly encounter every form of sophistry imaginable, of course. You realize when talking to these people or feminists that not only are they uneducated about the ideology they associate with, but they have been carefully trained to have a metaphorical toolkit of convenient ways to blow you off. Usually, it begins with an avoidance of talking about the topic at all. They act dumbfounded as to why you'd possibly want to talk about their faith in relation to a former American president from almost a decade ago. They'll say, "How does this relate to my faith?" When you are forced to explain the common logic that the Bush administration was heavily powered by Christian religious fundamentalism, they'll try to give the no true Scotsman logical fallacy, saying that Bush wasn't a real Christian and that the churches who supported him were not real Christians either. I'll spare you the rehashing of the rest of the conversation. I choose to believe you've witnessed this type of thing once or twice. Feminism is harder to argue against because, as both an ideology and organization, it is abstracted to the point of such utter vagueness that it is extremely hard to really pin any specific behavior on feminism itself. It is a much younger ideology than Christianity, and it has never been the ruling ideology of any large society, despite what some feminists might claim. However, when you try to tell the average feminist about the lies and corruption of Hillary Clinton, for example, they'll say she's not a real feminist, despite the fact that she said she was several times. When you try to tell them about the lies and corruption of Anita Sarkeesian, they'll say, "Why the hell should I be interested in video games?" When you try to tell them about the flagrant racism from somebody like Kat Black, they'll try to excuse it in some way, saying that life must be really difficult for a black transgender woman or something, when the point is that Kat Black is one of the rare specimens that is knowledgeable enough about feminism who has still decided that it's a good thing and has gone on to make herself relatively famous peddling thinly veiled political propaganda and even more thinly veiled bigotry. This is the culmination of not only the fact that Kat Black is a deeply damaged person with hate in her heart for white men, but also that feminism itself has not just enabled her to feel that white men deserve to be treated like garbage, but more so, feminism actually encouraged Kat Black to go out of her way to say horribly racist things like the tweet shown here, because feminist theories about the white cis heteropatriarchy have sealed the deal in her already twisted mind that fighting against white people's mere existence on the planet is actual social justice. I mean, she's not exactly advocating for white genocide, I'll admit, but this tweet, what the fuck is she saying though? It's kind of crazy. How did Kat Black go from thinking merely that women are oppressed in society and that she should be a feminist to fix that, into writing tweets like this one that could vaguely be construed as advocating for the extinction of the white race? Well, in order to find out, you'd actually have to take a good critical look at feminist theories like intersectionality, not just from people who advocate for them, but from people who advocate against them, like Christina Hoff Sommers. I don't have any more time to get into the intricacies of these theories because I've done it a lot in other videos, but feminist theories are a giant wealth of bad ideas, and very few good ones. Ultimately, only about 5% of the theories within feminism actually make any sense. Everything else is mostly just a bunch of elaborate ways to demonize men, then justifications for taking power and resources away from men and other majority groups and putting them into the hands of feminist leaders, as well as clever ways to silence anybody who objects to it. And now that feminism has wormed its way firmly into the political establishment in the West, it spends probably the majority of its time silencing people. That's really about all there is to feminism if you have time to go through it and break it down. But of course, career feminists and feminist politicians don't want you to know that. And I hope drastically that you never have a reason to learn too much about it, as I hope that the word feminism goes back to being a dirty word, and that people start being women's rights advocates instead of being a feminist if they want to focus on the issues of women and girls. That's all I have for today. Drop me a comment. Please do help me out on Patreon if you think I seem cool. I am going to come up with a list of perks that come along with being my patron soon. then hit that bell button next to the subscribe button so you don't get unsubscribed, and stay tuned.